Good day to you, scholars. Welcome to another day of cursive. We are so close to the end of our packet where we've learned the formation for each of the letters. We are today doing B and H. We're going to actually start with lowercase b, which begins with a formation that looks a lot like the lowercase l from last week. Now, when writing a lowercase b, we have to be careful because there's a kick out tail that, if you're not careful, looks a lot like another letter being connected to an L. So, we'll talk about that when we get to these words. First, pencils are down. Watch me, please, form. I'm going to trace and try a couple of the B's for you to watch first. So I'm starting at the baseline. I slant to the top line, thin loop, and then what was, scholars, a kick-out tail for the L becomes a line to the middle dotted line, and then a little kick-out tail that's going to become the beginning of the next letter. All right, so watch me try one. So starting at the baseline, slanting to the top line, thin loop, baseline, up to the middle dotted line, kick out tail. All right. Watch me trace and try another pair before you join me. Keep your pencils down, please. Oh, I see you. Pencils down. So, starting at the baseline, I slant to the top line, thin loop to the baseline, curve around, back up to that middle dotted line, then the kick out tail. So it's almost like you're closing it, right? Like you went down and around this way to make the B, which is not how we print a B. But it's sort of like you're doing that, but you don't actually touch back to the loop. Right? So watch me try one more. Starting at the baseline, slanting to the top line, thin loop to the baseline, up to the middle dotted line, kick out tail. All right. So it looks a lot like an L, but you continue it up to that middle dotted line and then give it that little kick out. That kick out becomes very important. You'll see as we work. Scholars, let's trace this one together. Go ahead, pencils up. Starting at the baseline, slanting to the top line, thin loop, baseline, curve to the middle line, kick out tail. Now, their kick out tail, I feel like, drops a little bit more than it should. We don't probably need to do that big of a drop. Let's go ahead and try one. Starting at the baseline, slanting to the middle line, top line, thin loop, back to the baseline, curve around, middle line, kick out tail. All right, let's trace. Starting at the baseline, slanting to the top line, thin loop, back to the baseline, curve around, up to the middle line, kick out tail. All right, we're going to try another one together. Here we go. Everyone feeling ready? Starting at the baseline, slanting to the top line, curve around, thin loop, right, baseline, back to the middle line, kick out tail. All right, one more pair for us to trace and try. Starting here at the baseline, slanting to the top line, thin loop, baseline, curve around to the middle line, kick out tail. All right. Trying one more together. Starting at the baseline, slanting to the top line, thin loop, baseline, curve around to the middle line, kick out tail. Now, scholars, here's why that kick out tail is really important. And I'm going to just show you down here. Right? If I write this B, and then I'm not really careful with my kick out tail, right? It could look like I'm writing an R, right? But maybe this is actually an I. B-I, like maybe I'm going to write bird. So this is why your formations really matter. Right? If I was writing bird, right, I would want to make my B, and then my kick out tail has to kind of dip, and then I'd have to go up to touch that middle line to come down to make my I, then my R, and then my D. And then make sure I put that dot on. So that looks much more like bird than this does. So you have to be really careful on that kick out tail of the B. It's probably the trickiest kick out tail in the middle like that. So scholars, you're going to pause and write at least 6 more B's right here. And then you have the word bread, oblong, and jab. So bread, for example, I'm going to make the loop of my B. And when I come up and do the kick out tail, I'm not going to just make this into the R. I have to actually go up to the middle dotted line and then do that slight slant and curve in to make the R. BR is really pretty tricky together. So we're just throwing you right into a really tricky combination there with bruh. Right? So B, and then the kick out tail, you're going to go back up to the middle dotted line, that little bit of a slant, and then that curve in to make the R. Right? So be careful on that. Just do the best you can. Be patient with yourself. Remember, you're just learning how to do this. The more we practice, the better you're going to get. Your formations will come along. So go ahead, press pause. At least 6 B's and at least 2 of bread, oblong, and jab. Good luck. All right, now that you've had a chance to do the lowercase b, let's turn the page and go to lowercase h. Lowercase h has a very similar beginning to L and B. Pencils down, watching me lowercase h. I'm starting at the baseline, slanting to the top line, thin loop, down to the baseline. I come back up to the middle dotted line and go over the hill to make a kick out tail. Right? Watch me do one. Starting at the baseline, slanting to the top line, thin loop. I come straight down. Then I go back up and go over the hill to make my kick out tail. All right, here we go. I'm going to try one. Starting at the baseline, just watch me do one more pair. Slanting to the top line, thin loop, down to the baseline, back up to the middle dotted line to go over the hill to make the kick out tail. All right, watching me try one more. Starting at the baseline, I slant to the top line, thin loop, straight down to the baseline, back up to the middle line, over the hill for the kick out tail. All right. Pencils up. Let's trace this one together. Starting at the baseline, slanting to the top line, thin loop, straight down to the baseline, back up to the middle line to go over the hill for the kick out tail. All right. Starting at the baseline, slanting to the top line, thin loop, straight down to the baseline, back up to the middle dotted line to go over the hill for the kick out tail. All right. Tracing again. Starting at the baseline. Slanting to the top line. Over the hill. Back to the baseline. Up to the middle of the line. To go over the hill for the kick up tail. We're trying another. Do you feel ready? Here we go. Starting at the baseline. Slanting to the top line. Oh, thin loop. Down to the baseline. Back up to the middle line to go over the hill for the kick up tail. All right, one more pair to trace and try. Here we go. Starting at the baseline. Slanting to the top line. Thin loop to the baseline. Back up to the middle line. Over the hill for the kick up tail. All right, everyone. Let's try one more. Here we go. Starting at the baseline. Slanting to the top line. Thin loop. Drop to the baseline. Back up to the middle line. Over the hill for the kick up tail. All right. Writers, that's going to leave you 6 H's to try. At least 2 have. At least 2 of ZH and OH. More if you'd like, because you'll have a lot of room there. But at least 2 of each of those, and at least 6 of the letter H by itself. Then we can continue with the uppercase letters. Good luck!